Hello everyone and welcome to Quality Sewing and Vacuums. How do I today? I'm Andrea and I am really excited to be with you today because I found out some really fun ways to make some grid quilting that looks so hard and so complicated, but it is so easy. I made a ton of these blocks last night to prepare for today, and come with me and I'm going to show you how you can get rid of a bunch of your scraps or make some really beautiful things. And so come on over and I'm going to show you how to make these really cool grid quilts. All right, so the first thing that we're going to start with is the grid fusible interfacing. Right here, this is, I'll have you look from over top. This is called watercolor grid and it's fusible, but it has a grid printed on it. This is the 2-inch grid and I'll show you my little scrap here. You can sort of see those. Let's see if I've got a lighter thing. Anyways, I'll show it in my hands right here. So these are 2-inch grids. You can see those under my hands right there. And there's one side is fusible. Well, that side is not fusible and one side is fusible. So the fusible side, you know, it has the glue on it because it has little bumps on it. I'm going to set this aside so you can see some examples of the blocks that I made. Here's a block that I made. I finished last night. I'm going to show you how you can do either, this is kind of a hodgepodge, and I'm going to show you how to do sashing on the side. So when you're done, you have these beautiful, crazy scrap quilts in the middle, and then the sashing right here that helps to tie it all together. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. This is my original one, and the idea I got from this actually came from our package of Whim's watercolor quilts. This one is called Hummingbird Kisses, and our So Fun gals, teachers, brought this in for the month of May. And if you can see in the background here, you can see all those little bits and pieces of the fabric. They almost look like they were watercolored, and then they had the hummingbirds appliqued right on top right there. But I'm going to show you how to do what they did in the background here, or you can just do a scrappy quilt. So that is the idea kind of behind this one, is you can see that the darker colors are on the outside here, and then mid-tone colors are in the middle here, and then it goes to the light color right in the middle right there. So that's kind of the idea behind this, but I got this really crazy idea and I wanted to show you how to make scrappy quilts. Awesome. I don't know if you are like me, but I have boxes, I'll put this down here, boxes of scraps where I'm so sure I was going to use it for another quilt someday, and now's the day! An easy way to use up all these random little bits and pieces from other quilts. So what you need to do is grab your scraps. I've got my scraps here. Some of these are the little tiny mini packs, and what you need is you need to cut down your little scraps and pieces into 2-inch squares. So I've got a bunch of these already cut out, and this is just randomness from my box here. So I've got these all right here. I'm going to take my grid. First of all, I'm going to flip my Quilter Select over to the wool setting, as you definitely don't want to press onto the cutting side, because that would make you very sad. So what I did is I made them 6 inches by 6 inches. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need a different grid there. Well, anyways, you'll get the idea behind this. So you take your little squares and you just randomly start placing them right over top, just like this, anywhere. The more random, the better, right? And if you want, you can flip them to the other side, so there is a little bit of difference in these. Those are kind of cowboy-y together. You get the idea. You just start putting down all these random little bits all over your grid, like so. And you want them as like the little sections as close together as possible. I'm going to get that random thread out of there. But it doesn't have to be perfect, which is the cool thing. Look at this. We're already like halfway done with our quilt block here. Look at that. Just randomness. How fun is that? I'm going to put just a couple more pieces on here because you get the idea. Here's another one that I haven't used. Right there. I'm going to throw on a couple more. Right like that. Okay, then you're going to take your iron. I'm just going to iron these guys. Make sure that you cover your whole thing, but just because you guys get the idea, I'm just going to set it on top like that. You don't want to move your iron back and forth. You just kind of want to set it on top so that the fusible glue melds into your fabrics, right, like so. Okay, and then once you've got that entire, I kind of go and I tack it all in. I'm going to set this one aside. Oh, look, it's all done. So once I've gone and I've kind of, I've made sure that they're all glued on like this on this side, I like to flip it over and then you can go do the other side as well and make sure that it's all the little squares are on there appropriately. Okay, and now comes the fun part. This is so easy. Watch this. You fold it and it's already, since there's that seam there, it already wants to fold right like that. And I just make sure that I can kind of see that line all the way down like so. And we're going to take this over to the sewing machine. Set this aside. And I'm going to wake up my machine. Hello. And I am going to just stitch that 1/4 inch all the way down. And I always like to stitch a scant 1/4 inch. And that means I'm making sure that my fabric is on the very inside of my 1/4 inch line right there. And that just allows for the thread. Okay, so then you just proceed to fold again and you stitch and you fold again and stitch. And I've got one that's all the way done on one side. Okay, ta-da! So I've done all those down one side, and then I'm going to take this back over to my iron, right over here. Oh, I'm going to open it all the way. I'm going to take my iron, and I'm going to go and iron down. And it really doesn't matter which way you iron down your little seams here. That way. It is definitely sticky today. All right. Right like that. Ironing it down. I really love how this little iron doesn't have a cord. It is so lovely. And if you wanted to kind of avoid the stickiness, this is the non-sticky side, but it's still kind of loving the iron right now. If you wanted to put down like one of your pressing sheets over the top of this, it might make it slightly easier. Okay, so I've just ironed all of my seams one way. I'm going to flip it over, and this way, if you pull that little edges right there, it will help to make sure those seams are all nice and open to their fullest extent. Like, oh, I won't put my arm over the top like that. You can see a little bit better. Oh, look at that. And we're halfway done with our block. Okay, so now that everything is nice and beautiful and pressed, look at all your corners are matching up beautifully. Okay, we're gonna flip it over to the back. All these are going one way. And then you just do it the other way. You fold it like so. Do a little finger press, and just beware of the little flaps as you put it into the machine. You want to make sure that the flaps are going away from your needle and not pointing towards your needle. It'll just go over those a whole lot easier. So we come over here. I'm just going to stitch down all of these seams. Just like that. And you do it again. And you just repeat all the way down. We'll do one more and then I'll show you the completed one. Just like that. Okay, so you just continue down all of those sides, and then I'm magically going to pull out the completed one. Ta-da! So we'll go underneath the camera right here, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all completed down. So we stitched this side all down that way, then we stitched all across there, and you can see all these little flaps are already going all one way. We give it a press with the iron. Ooh, make sure those are all pressed down like that. We flip it over and we press it all together. And look at that. You just did all that in like just a few minutes. Like the hardest part is like figuring out what fabrics you're going to use and cutting those little fabrics. But once you get it on here, you get those perfect corners and these teeny tiny squares that look like you spent a lot of time on it, but you really didn't. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is you want to square up your block. And this guy, I made 9 inches by 9 inches. So that's what I'm going to do here. And I forgot to bring myself a rotary cutter. Is there a rotary cutter in there? Oh dear. Okay, so I'm going to line this up over here. And I'm just going to cut a little bit off the side and then measure from there. Is there a rotary in that drawer? Sorry, guys. Okay, so once I get these sides cut like this, what I'm going to do is I have my little sashings pre-cut already. I decided on 2 inches because I figured about 1.5 inches for the sashing in between all of my blocks was going to look pretty nice. Now, whatever you do for the sashing, you want to make sure it's either like a light color or a dark color or something that just, whatever it is, just make it universal. That way it'll frame all of your crazy little squares in between. Ooh, thank you. All right. So I'm just going to kind of even this up just like that. We're going to trim off these edges just to square up our blocks. Just like that. And put that right there. I'll just square up these 2 sides that I'm going to be adding the sashing to, because you get the idea of how to square up the rest of it. Okay, so I've got my 2 sides squared up, and then I'll square up the other ones in a moment here. Okay, close my rotary blade. Want to make sure. Close that up. Now, I was super technical. I have no idea what size of quilt this is going to be. I'm just going to keep adding squares until I like it, because I just kind of made this up as I went. Okay, so I made my sashing 2 inches right here. I'm going to square up this little side right here. I'm going to make it a little bit longer, and then I'll square that up together. But I'm going to take my ruler, and this first sashing, I want to make sure I line it up with that side right there. I'm just going to fold this over. And we're going to sew it here at the sewing machine at 1/4 inch, just the same as all the other ones. Okay. All right. And then we'll give it a little press. Now when I do the sashing like this, I always just fold it out so that that seam allowance here goes out with just the single layer. Put all any excess bulk out towards the single layer. Ta-da! Just like that. I'm going to flip over my cutting mat here. And now I'm going to find my sashing for this side. I'm going to take another piece of sashing. I'm going to make it a little longer because I haven't squared up that side yet. Right like so. So I just cut a bunch of these 2-inch strips for the sashing. And I have lots of this fabric at home. So I'll be able to make this really as big as I want. Right like that. Easy peasy. I'm going to close up my rotary cutter, set that aside. And then I'm going to take my sashing here and fold it over the top. Right like so. We're going to take it over to the machine and sew it again at 1/4 inch. Okay, I'm gonna flip this over again. I just love how I can flip this over and all my working station is right here by my sewing machine with this cool Quilter Select. And I love that blue color, that light turquoisey blue. Super pretty. Okay, so now all I need to do is square up the rest of my block here. And even up those edges just a wee bit. All right, right like so. All right, so, and trim off this side, even there, even there, even there. Okay. Right, like so. Ta-da! And I just finished my quilt block. I mean, I can trim up that side too, but for the most part, you get the idea of how to make these crazy quilts. Okay, so the cool thing about repeating those, how you have the sashing, across the top and the side, is that when you do it every time across the top and down the side, all you have to do is put your blocks together all the same. So no matter which way they're going, you just always make sure the sashing is on the same side, and then you can sew those two pieces together. Well, all the pieces together, that is. And then you have your quilt as it's going along. I'm going to make sure my seams are going the right way underneath there. I can feel that one is not going the right way, so I'm going to stop and lift it up and flip it up. That one also stop and flip it up. Okay. Ah, and look at that. We have started our quilt. with its beautiful sashing through the sides. When you do it, when you sash as you go, you don't have to worry about putting those long strips down the middle, and you just put your squares together. And just like that, you can have a fun, crazy quilt with all your scraps and bits and pieces, because I have an embarrassing amount of my scrap bits and pieces. And I love that this was so fast. Isn't that so fun? I mean, it's just a randomness. You put anything in there. My mom always says, if your fabric is ugly, it's not small enough. So you just cut those pieces really small like this in those 2-inch squares, and fast and easy, you can get a cute, fun quilt. And like I said, I was just making this up as I went. You can make these quilt patches as big or small as you want. I just chose six down over and 6 over, so there's 36 little squares in each one of these. You can adjust it for whatever size you want, and I just made my sashings 2 inches wide. Anyways, thank you for joining me today. I hope you adventure into doing some fun scrap quilting that uses up all your bits and pieces too, that you have been saving for some special occasion. And now is that time. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next Tuesday on Quality Sewing and Vacuums. How do I?